The first time it happened, Daniel Marsh thought nothing of it. He was 34 years old, a high school history teacher in a small town called Grover's Mill, Pennsylvania, the same town where Orson Welles once convinced half of America that Martians had landed. There was something about that town. Something in the soil, maybe. Something in the air that had never quite settled back down after that night in 1938. Daniel was not superstitious. He was not spiritual. He kept a whiteboard calendar in his kitchen. He drank black coffee every morning at exactly 6:47 a.m. He graded papers with a red pen, not because he enjoyed marking wrong answers, but because red was easier to see under poor light. He was, in every measurable sense, an ordinary man living an ordinary life. That Tuesday morning in October, he woke up at 3:12 a.m. to no alarm. No sound. No dream that he could remember. He simply opened his eyes, stared at the ceiling, and felt a pressure in his chest that he could only describe later as anticipation, like the feeling right before a car crash. When your body knows before your mind does. He lay still for 3 minutes. Then his phone rang, his mother, calling to tell him that his father had just collapsed in the kitchen. Massive heart attack. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. Daniel took bereavement leave. He buried his father. He came back to teaching. He told himself that the timing of waking up had been a coincidence. The human brain, he knew from the psychology chapter he taught every spring semester, is extraordinarily good at finding patterns, even where none exist. Apophenia, it's called. Seeing faces in clouds. Hearing messages in static. He moved on until it happened again. 3 weeks later. 2:58 a.m. That same chest pressure. That same stillness in the air, like the house itself was holding its breath. He lay there. 3 minutes passed. Then he heard the sound of squealing tires outside, followed by the hollow, sickening crunch of a car wrapping itself around the oak tree at the end of his street. He was the first one to call 911. The driver, a 17-year-old kid named Marcus Webb, survived. But just barely. Daniel stood at his window watching the red and blue light strobe across his front lawn. And he felt something cold move through him. Not grief. Not fear, recognition. He started keeping a journal, not on his phone. He didn't trust the cloud with this, and he couldn't have explained why. He bought a composition notebook from the dollar store and kept it in his nightstand drawer. Every morning when he woke up early, he wrote down the exact time, what he felt, and then, after whatever happened, he wrote that down to be why November. He had 7 entries. 7 early wake-ups. 7 incidents. Car crash. House fire 3 blocks over. A student of his, Jenny Calloway, who had a seizure in 3rd period. A water main that burst downtown and flooded 4 businesses. His neighbor's dog, struck by a car while it had gotten loose in the yard. None of the events were connected. There was no single cause, no pattern in the type of event. The only pattern was the timing. He always woke up exactly 3 minutes before he tried to test it. On the 8th incident, when he jolted awake at 4:03 a.m., he got up immediately. Walked around the house. Checked the stove, off. Checked the locks, secured. Walked outside in the cold and looked up and down the dark street. Nothing. He stood on his porch for exactly 2 minutes and 45 seconds. By his watch. Then the sound came from the house next door. Mrs. Eleanor Pruitt, 71 years old, screaming. Not in fear, in pain. She had fallen getting out of bed and shattered her hip on the hardwood floor. Daniel called 911 while he was already running through her unlocked back door after the paramedics left. After Eleanor was loaded into the ambulance with her hand gripping Daniel's like it was the only solid thing left in the world. He walked back to his own house, sat at the kitchen table, and opened the composition notebook. He wrote one question at the top of a new page. What is this for? December arrived, and Daniel made a decision that would quietly begin to cost him everything. He stopped sleeping normally, not completely. He still slept. But he began setting alarms at irregular intervals throughout the night, waking himself up every 90 minutes to check. Just in case he had slept through a 3-minute window. Just in case something was happening right now and he was missing it. Just in case someone needed him and he wasn't awake to help. His colleagues noticed the change first. Sarah Okafor, who taught English in the classroom next to his, pulled him aside after school one afternoon in early December and asked, with genuine concern in her eyes, if he was okay. "You look like you haven't slept in weeks," she said. "I'm fine," he told her. "Just grading a lot of papers." She didn't believe him. He could see it in her face. But she let it go. the way people do when they sense that pressing further will only push someone further away. His students noticed next. He had always been the kind of teacher who made eye contact, who learned every name by the second week, who laughed at his own jokes before finishing them. Now he sat at his desk during class discussions instead of pacing. He gave multiple choice tests instead of essay prompts. He was present, but only barely, the way a television is present when the sound is on but nobody's watching. He was listening for something else. The 10th incident changed everything. January 8th. He woke at 1:17 a.m. with the chest pressure so intense that he sat straight up gasping, like a man pulled from deep water. He grabbed his notebook, clicked his pen. 3 minutes. He waited. Nothing happened. He walked through the house. Nothing. Checked outside. Nothing. Sat on the porch in the January cold for 20 minutes. Shaking, not from the temperature. He went back inside. Made coffee. Sat at the table and stared at the notebook until sunrise. Nothing happened that day. Or the next. He checked the news obsessively. Local, state, national. Nothing in Grover's Mill. Nothing nearby. He began to wonder if he had imagined the pressure. If his brain, now primed by months of this pattern, had manufactured the feeling out of sleep deprivation and expectation. If he had finally become exactly what he feared, a man seeing faces in clouds. He almost felt relief. Then, for days later, he got a call from his sister in Ohio. His Aunt Carol had died. Quietly, in her sleep. January 8th, time of death estimated between 1 o'clock and 1:30 a.m. Daniel sat in his car in the school parking lot for a long time after hanging up. The engine was off. It was 17 degrees outside. He didn't notice. The pattern hadn't broken. It had only stretched. The thing, whatever it was, wasn't local. It wasn't limited by geography. It was connected to him, to the people who were connected to him. And it was not giving him time to intervene. It was simply waking him up to witness, to know, to feel the weight of something happening, even when he could do nothing about it. He wrote in the notebook that night, "This isn't a gift. It's a leash." February. Daniel had lost 11 pounds. His apartment looked like the inside of a mind coming apart at the seams, sticky notes on the walls, a printed calendar with certain dates circled in red pen, a corkboard he had bought at a teacher supply store with index cards pinned to it, names, times, events, red, string connecting them. He told himself it was research. Sarah finally sat down across from him in the break room one afternoon, put her hands flat on the table, and refused to leave until he talked to her. He showed her the notebook. He hadn't planned to. He had never planned to show anyone. But there was something about the way she looked at him, not with pity, not with skepticism, but with careful, serious attention, that made him hand it over. She read it slowly. All of it. Every entry. When she finished, she closed it and set it on the table between them. "Daniel," she said, "when did you last sleep more than 3 hours at a time?" "That's not the point." "It's very much the point." "The pattern is real," he said. "I didn't imagine it." "I believe that you experienced these things," she said carefully. "I believe that your father died, that the car crash happened, that Mrs. Pruitt fell. I'm not saying the events aren't real." She paused. "I'm asking whether the connection you're drawing between them is real, or whether it's something your mind built to survive your grief." He hadn't thought about it that way. He didn't want to. He took the notebook back and left the break room. He told himself she didn't understand. He told himself that was the thing about real experiences. They were always hardest to explain to people who hadn't lived inside them. But that night, lying awake at 2 a.m. by choice, staring at the ceiling, he heard her voice in his head. Whether it's something your mind built to survive your grief. His father had died in October. The very first time. He didn't sleep at all that night. March 3 Road. Daniel woke at 3:47 a.m. The pressure was different this time. Not in his chest. Behind his eyes. A deep, resonant ache, like a frequency just below what the human ear can process but the human body still feels. In the jaw, in the sinuses, in the space between thoughts. He reached for the notebook. His hand was shaking. He sat up and looked around the room and saw nothing. But the room felt different. The shadows weren't moving. Shadows don't move, but they seemed thicker somehow. More deliberate. 3 minutes, he told himself. Just wait 3 minutes. He watched the clock on his nightstand. 3:47.3:48.3:49.3:50 arrived, and nothing happened. He exhaled. Picked up the pen. Began to write the time in the notebook. And then his phone lit up with a text message. Unknown number. No contact name. He had never seen the number before. The message read, "Stop waking up." He stared at it. His first thought was spam. Wrong number. A drunk text. His second thought came immediately after and was much harder to dismiss. Nobody knew about the waking up. He hadn't told anyone except Sarah, and he had described it to her in general terms, not in the specific language of waking up. He typed back, "Who is this?" The message delivered. The typing indicator appeared. Those 3 small dots, pulsing. He watched them for 60 seconds. They disappeared. No response came. He called the number. Straight to a generic voicemail. No name. No recording. Just the automated message telling him to leave his name and number after the tone. He didn't leave a message. He sat in his bed until 5 a.m. Phone in his hands, waiting for another message that never came. Then he got up, made coffee, and did something he had not done in months. He called Sarah. Sarah was, among other things, significantly better at internet research than Daniel. She found the number within 2 hours. It was registered to a burner phone purchased at a gas station in Pittsburgh, paid for in cash, 8 months ago. No name. No address beyond the store location. A dead end. Could be anybody, she said. They were sitting in his apartment, the corkboard visible behind him. She looked at it and didn't say anything about it. Could be a wrong number that happened to use a phrase that meant something to you. Stop waking up, Daniel said. That's not a coincidental phrase. It could mean dozens of things out of context. But in context, you've been awake for most of the last 5 months and your entire apartment is covered in evidence that you've been building a case, she said, not unkindly. I'm saying that context matters. Your context right now is not, Daniel, look at me, is not the context of a person processing information clearly. He looked at her. I think something real happened to you, she said. I think you had a strange run of experiences that started when you were in grief and your brain was wide open and raw. I think those experiences felt connected because connection is how we survive loss. We need things to mean something, especially deaths, especially sudden ones. She reached across the table and put her hand over his. I think you need to sleep. I think you need to talk to someone. And I think you need to let this go. He nodded. He didn't mean it. But he nodded. That night, he took the sleeping pill his doctor had prescribed 3 months ago and never opened. He slept from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., straight through, dreamless and dark. He woke up feeling better than he had in months. He made coffee. He stood at the window and watched the morning come up over the rooftops. Then, he checked his notebook out of habit. He had written in it at 3:47 a.m. He hadn't been awake at 3:47 a.m. He had been unconscious. He was certain of it, but there it was. His handwriting. His pen. The cap was off and lying on the nightstand, which meant he had used it. 5 words written in the notebook in the middle of what should have been the deepest sleep he'd had in months. It's not me. It's you. Daniel called in sick for the first time in 7 years. He sat with the notebook open on the kitchen table and he thought about what Sarah had said. About grief and the mind and the stories we tell ourselves to survive. He thought about his father. He thought about the way his father used to wake him up on Saturday mornings by standing silently in the doorway until Daniel felt the presence and opened his eyes. Never a touch. Never a sound. Just a weight in the air. He thought about whether he believed in anything beyond what he could see and measure. He thought about the text message. Stop waking up. He thought about the 5 words in the notebook written in his own hand during a night he could not account for. He opened his laptop and searched for the burner phone number again. Going further this time, deeper than Sarah had gone. Into forums and reverse lookup sites and the specific gas station location in Pittsburgh, which was, he realized with a slow, dropping sensation, exactly 2.3 miles from the hospital where his father had died, not where he had collapsed. Where he had been taken. Where he had been pronounced. Daniel closed the laptop. He sat very still. He was not a superstitious man. He was not a spiritual man. He kept a whiteboard calendar. He drank black coffee. He used a red pen because red was easier to see in poor light. He picked up the composition notebook and turned to the last page, the very last page, which he had never written on, which he had always kept blank because some part of him believed, superstitiously, perhaps, That filling the last page meant something was finished. Someone had already written on it. The ink was different, slightly thinner, slightly bluer than his pen. The handwriting was close to his, but not quite. The letters leaned the wrong way. T said, "The 3 minutes aren't for the events. They're so you know I'm still here. Stop looking for the pattern. Just know I stayed. The next time you wake up, don't write anything down. Just listen. I'm right there with you in those 3 minutes. I always have been. I'm sorry I had to go." Daniel Marsh put the composition notebook down on the kitchen table. He did not call Sarah. He did not call his sister. He did not call anyone. He sat in his quiet kitchen in the town where Orson Welles once convinced half of America that something impossible had arrived. And he thought about his father standing in the doorway on Saturday mornings, never making a sound, just making himself felt. He didn't know what was real. He wasn't sure it mattered anymore. That night, at 3:17 a.m., he woke up. The chest pressure was there. The familiar weight. He didn't reach for the notebook. He didn't reach for his phone. He lay still, eyes open in the dark. And he listened. 3 minutes passed. He never told anyone what he heard. The last entry in the composition notebook, in Daniel's own handwriting, was dated the following morning. It contained only 5 words. I know. I love you.